our first item is the 2020 annual meeting minutes. There's Kevin. Where'd Kevin go?
November 8th, 2020 annual business meeting minutes. Joel Junt called the meeting to order and opened in prayer. Minutes of the January 26, 2020 meeting were read by Ron Duvall, motion by Caleb Nordquist and seconded by Keith Garber to adopt the minutes. Motion carried. Joel Junt presented the proposed bylaw amendments. There were no questions or comments on the proposed bylaw amendments. Joel Junt thanked the financial team and presented 2020 financial report. Finances were prorated to reflect a 9-month period since the last annual meeting in January 2020. Highlights from the report: contributions down versus last year approximately 3.7%. Expenses down versus last year approximately 3.9%. Missions funds received down versus last year approximately 13.7%. And building savings funds received down versus last year approximately 21.6%. Joel Junt presented the proposed 2021 budget and status of the building loan. There were no questions or comments. A quorum of the voting members cast ballots concerning the following items: adoption of 2021 budget, adoption of proposed bylaw amendments, re-elect Joel Junt as an elder, elect Robert Hettinger as to Deacon Board. Joel thanked the members for their service and efforts to glorify God and closed in prayer. Meeting adjourned. Post-meeting note: all of the ballot items were adopted by the voting members, respectively submitted. Ron Duvall, Secretary.
So those were the meeting minutes from last year's meeting. I need a motion one way or another. Motion to approve the minutes. I need a second. Jim? Sorry. Jim, any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you. Virginia, I'm assuming you're going to move these for me? Okay, let's go into the financial report. Next. So our team has not really changed much over the past number of years. Amy is our financial secretary, who in essence pays the bills and does all of the outward work. I've been treasurer now for 12 years. I handle the deposits and kind of looking at things from an overall standpoint. The ushers help count on Sunday. We try to make sure that we have 3 individuals and every Sunday counting funds, just more from a transparency side. If you are interested in that, we need more ushers to help count as well as do the other things. So please think about that and how you might be able to serve in that area. The Deacon Board is really responsible for reviewing and approving the bills that come in on a regular basis. They also have drafted the budget this year and spent time with that, as well as monitor it over the year. The elders, we meet quarterly with the deacons and go through the quarterly financials, but as well as providing the recommendation here to you this morning. And then Virginia is key in getting those things mailed out and sent on their way. Just a couple reminders. So when we move to the fiscal year being October 1 through September 30th. Remember that your year-end contributions are not available until January, so those will be sent out at that point in time. And again, there's actually 2 ways to give electronically now if you want, through Tithely as well as through ACH, automatic. Some of the highlights then for this past year, we saw our contributions up from last year a little bit, about $4,000. Again, the numbers that I'm comparing here today, these were prorated for last year because we weren't with a full year. We had 9 months, so the comparison is trying to get it to be a year to a year. Expenses overall for this past year were down just a little bit. They were pretty close to being even, around $485,000. Some of the highlights from actual versus what was budgeted last year. So general contributions were below what we had budgeted. We had budgeted 625,000 and they came in at 619,000. The building funds that we received, remember we had a goal to pay off that debt sooner than what was the 2028, and those came in above budget, about $85,000. So that's definitely a blessing. And so with that, we took those funds that came in, and we were able to expend out 147,668 above the budgeted amount. And the rest of those lined under building equipment were pretty much in line with what was budgeted. On the next slide, the lines under administration were pretty much again in line with what was budgeted. Under the mission area of line items, the a little bit below 7,179, less than what we had budgeted. So we need to continue to look at ways to utilize these funds. And then under the last group of line items, the church programs, a number of items were less than budgeted. The Awana was less by 3,936. Education materials were less by close to $5,000. And then our small group was less by about $3,000. So that's the operating budget and where things ended up with. And again, you've got a report. Hopefully you picked up a report and you can look at all of those numbers in detail. On the mission side, which is in essence faith-based, again, comparing last year versus this year, funds were up quite a bit, 41.5%. And those funds, almost $254,000. So that's went a long ways to helping the missionaries that we have agreed to provide on from a financial standpoint. The amount of funds that were paid out were down a little bit, and again, we're looking at prorated items, about 6.7%, but you have to remember that there's a number of people that give from an individual basis that want their funds. They may contribute, let's say in December, and they want those funds to be prorated out for the entire year. So we'll never have the amount that comes in to equal the amount that goes out. And then under our building savings, the funds were up from last year, as I mentioned earlier, 147,745. And what we had prorated last year to come in, and what actually was 69,000. So it's quite significant from what we had budgeted. I don't know if you can see the bottom. So the amount that's in there right now is $209,000, and again, that's monies in the missions as well as in the building budget. So right at the end of this fiscal year, there was $42,740 in that account, and the deacons decide when to take more of that money and put it towards the principal of the loan. But what we do is try to at least keep a couple months from principal and interest overall from that monthly payment back, just in case we have a couple bad months. So overall, look at from a financial standpoint, the amount of funds that were received that came into the church was $1,030,260, and the amount of money that went out was $977,941. So the next slides I kind of just break out so you get an idea of percent-wise where the money comes in for and what eventually goes out. So this first graph shows the funds, the revenues that come into the church. So about 60% of those come in as general funds. About $7,000 come in as Sunday school, the pop machine, and reimbursable for books. The missions that came in this year was close to 25%, or 253,000, and then again the building designated funds that came in was almost 50% of the overall revenues at the 157,000. On the flip side, the expenses for our personnel, that's about 36% of the funds that come in go towards salaries and wages. Those line items that you saw on the building and equipment, that was 113,000, about 14%. Missions, again, 25% that was spent out. The admin line items is about close to $20,000. Our program line items are 5.5%, and then again, the building fund of what was paid out was 147,000, or close to 18%. So I'm going to pause there before we get into the operating budget and just see if there's any questions that might be out there that you want answered. And we are live streaming too, right? So hopefully somebody's got something on Facebook. Any questions about last year's finances? Doug?
Joel, I was just curious in terms of the monies that go into the general fund then, so are there just decisions made monthly or however often and in terms of how they're broken out into these different expenses here then?
So the question is really geared towards how do we decide what funds from the general get paid out to what? Right. So it's really based on the budget and all the different line items that we have. On the mission side of the equation, it's all faith-based. So what comes in and that's designated, those then go out, and there's really not a decision that somebody gave $1,000 to women's prison and we didn't provide that. I don't think of a situation that we haven't done exactly what the individual wanted for those designated funds.
No, that's not exactly what I'm
Sorry.
understanding here. In terms of what goes into the general fund, in the previous slide you had general fund and X amount of dollars there, and then how that is broken out into some of these other funds that you might be.
Okay, so the revenue side, if you can go back one slide, Virginia. So the general contributions is whatever you give. If you haven't designated it, that's what I call general contributions. The next slide is personnel, buildings and equipment, administration, programs. Those are all general operating budgets, and those where those funds go. The building is designated, as well as the mission. So those two you would exclude out of that.
Right.
If that answers your question.
Yes.
Okay.
So that helps. Okay. Thanks.
Thanks. Jim?
My question is, under programs, does that include all of our community outreach?
No, community outreach is under missions. So if you grab your sheet that has the breakdown in the budget, there's three categories under missions. And then programs has a list of those line items that are specifically only under programs. So that's all rolled up into one.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? If you got some detailed ones, definitely grab me after the meeting today or anytime, and we can go through those. Okay, we're going to go on now to the budget for this fiscal year. So again, the Board of Deacons spent a majority of the time developing this and brought it to the elders with their recommendations, and now we're bringing it to you to vote on. The budget is definitely not, we don't know exactly what the revenues are coming in. Many churches do a stewardship campaign. We do not do that. So what we look at is the past years and what giving was, as well as the same thing of what our expenditures are. We look at a 3-year average, and as well as any new things that might be coming up, and that's how the budget is developed. So just changes over from 2021. Decided to leave the revenue projections as the same amount that was budgeted last year, which was $625,000. Same thing on the building account. Again, we budget for monies to come in and be designated towards the building so that we can pay that off before the term is over. Under salaries, the recommendation is to provide a 2% increase to our employees. And then under associate pastor, that has been reduced primarily due to the fact that we're already into the year and full knowledge that we won't have somebody on board here before and paying that full amount. And I'll get into that at the end of the discussion today. And then we added funding for a new treasurer if that's what we end up with being compensating for that. The next group of items, the building and the equipment, the only thing really significant there was to increase the technology by a couple $1,000s. And then the next line of budget items was such that to budget $10,000 to get an associate pastor for that search to take place. That would include their moving expenses. And then $15,000 is budgeted for the conflict resolution consultant who we have hired. And again, I will visit a little more about that towards the end of the discussion. And then the last list is the missions, and reduce the special needs of church families by $1,500. And then the church programs is just some minor changes here and there. So overall, from a budgetary standpoint, the recommendation is to not change our budget relative to the revenues that are coming in and leave those the same, but to increase the expenditures by $14,695 based on those other line items that I discussed to add on. I'm going to briefly go through the building before we get into questions. And if you recall, our building loan is a 10-year loan. The interest on that is 4.2% interest. Even though it's a 10-year loan, we set it up such that the loan payment is based on a 15-year loan. So that's a little less than if it was a 10-year loan amortization. And then again, at the end of 10 years, we would be expected to have money still left over that we would have to pay based on what they call a balloon payment. So we started the year at close to 171,000, and at the end of September 30th, we were at 910,583. Next slide. As stated numerous times, again, our goal is to definitely be paid off before 2028. When I spoke last year at this time, we stated that the goal was to actually be done even before that. And so again, one of the main reasons, one is to pay off the debt and be able to do more in our programs, but also not to have a balloon payment when it comes due in 2028. And we do that by budgeting those additional funds at $85,000 into the operating budget in order to bring more money in to help pay that off. To date, we are actually ahead of what this graph shows. So that's great news. In fact, I would say that we're probably 2 years ahead of time versus 2028, which again is a blessing to get that done and paid off. So I'm going to ask questions relative to the budget that you will be voting on with your ballots. Or are there any questions? Sam's got 2 year.
So looking over the 2022 planned expenses in your buildings and equipment fund, just kind of looking here at utilities, technology, buildings repair and maintenance, and various things associated there. Across the sector, there's been quite a bit of inflation, roughly 21% in many areas. And wondering, just kind of looking at what's being budgeted and versus what was budgeted in 21, I don't see that level of inflation being accounted for. Is there some reconciliation or extra funds that can be accessed should inflation continue the way it has been?
I might have to defer to the deacons when they looked at this budget item, if they looked at any major inflation to add to the budget, which again, this has not changed. It was $35,000 last year, or 35. You can see that we spent $34,000. I think the other thing that I would say in here, in my mind, is there is a little bit of cushion in some of these other line items that could help if, and I don't, to be honest with you, I don't know from electric and those, where's Chris Nelson? what's our, what's our inflation rate for this next year? Cody or Randy or anybody? Mark?
So that item in the budget, a lot of that is somewhat subjective to the funds available. You know, some of the things that we've done this year are replacing flooring in some of the classrooms and stuff like that, and what we've done to save from previous years is we did that to save some of the labor. And so the upcoming year we have goals to get some more of those types of projects done, but they'll be on, you know, a funds available basis. And so if inflation is such that we can't afford it and we don't have another line item that's, you know, ahead of where we can kind of shift the funds, you know, we just won't do it this year. Some of those are, you know, not, we want to be proactive and do them in a responsible way, but if none of them are mission critical, I guess that's how I'd put it, or some of them aren't. I mean, some of those are emergency repair budgets and stuff like that if a furnace goes out or whatever, but we have an emergency fund for that type of thing that's different than this one. So I don't know if that helps you understand our thought process on that. And I don't know, I don't want to, yeah, Randy's got some more to say about it.
Just in the one area I would add, I think there was like a $2,000 increase in the IT area. And that just represents that we have seen the church isn't any different than any other place. We're getting a lot more techy, and we have more expenses in that, and that's what that $2,000 increase would take into account, was the only thing I wanted to say.
So I might just coincide with what Mark stated. I don't know, Virginia, if you could pull up the slide that says 2021 highlights and its missions and building savings. So we started budgeting a number of years ago for the existing structure, which would be the family life and the old sanctuary area in the classrooms. We started budgeting $9,600 a year to put into that fund to replace a roof, major furnaces, those types of things. So those funds are available. Now, will they cover everything? No, but at least we've got some money available to help pay for some of those expenses that they come in. So that account right now, as of September 30th, has $53,307 in it. Hopefully that helps, Sam. Jim, got a question?
I don't know if I have a question as much as just an observation. When we're budgeting 1.3% of our church's resources for community outreach, I think we should be able to do better than that.
I would agree, and that's something that's on our strategic plan. And again, we need to go more and outreach our community, as well as spend our time and money and resources on those. So I don't think anybody disagrees with you, Jim, and hopeful that's going to happen this year and increase that. Thank you. Any other questions on the budget? All right, we are going to move then. Virginia, could you bring the agenda back up, please? Are there any other questions relative to the reports out, whether it's the elder or deacon report or pastor's report or women's report? Anybody have anything that they want some details or discussion on? Okay. With that, I'm going to give the mic over to Cody Lorenz, and Cody's going to talk about the first item there on the bequeath.
Good morning. This is the Bill Binish Trust update. On October 12th, 2021, The CBC Board of Deacons was made aware of Bill Benish's estate wishes. On October 26th of 2021, the CBC Board of Deacons passed a series of resolutions that did the following. 1. Accepted the responsibility of the trust agreement, and 2. Hired Mr. Benish's lawyer to assist with any legal issue, and 3. Hired Mr. Benish's tax accountant to assist with any tax issues, and 4. Hired a financial advisor, and 5. Hired bookkeeping services to keep the trust documents separate from CBC bookkeeping, and 6. Appointed Deacon Hofelt and Deacon Valerie as signatories for the trust bank accounts. These resolutions are attached to the October 26th minutes. So, what does this mean? In essence, Mr. Benish left his entire estate to Community Bible Church. The estate consists of 1. Farmland in Day County, 2. Stocks, 3. His house in Pierre, 4. The contents of his house in Pierre, and 5. Some miscellaneous items in a safety deposit box. The farmland in Day County is 50% inheritance. If and or when the land is sold, 50% of the value will go to another individual. Community Bible Church will receive all of the proceeds from the stocks and house and the contents of the house and the miscellaneous items in the safety deposit box. Estimated value of the estate is $2 million. As administrators of the Benish Trust, the Community Bible Church Board of Deacons will be responsible for the following. 1. Discussion in selling the Day County land if agreed by the other party. 2. Discussion on the sale of the house. 3. Discussion on the sale of the contents of the house. And 4. Discussion on the sale of the miscellaneous items in the safety deposit box. Once the decision has been determined, the Deacon Board will be responsible to complete the decision. This is a process and will take 1 or 2 years depending on several variables. Mr. Benish's trust also indicates his wishes to spend some of the money. They are 1. 100% scholarships to young people who wish to attend Summit, and 2. 50% scholarships to adults who wish to attend Summit events, and 3. To protect Community Bible Church from any serious attack. We will need to have some discussion with the lawyer to define what serious attack means. The CBC Deacon Board will have processing reports of the Benish Trust and CBC quarterly meetings. Please be in prayer for the Deacon Board for wisdom and discernment concerning the administration of the Benish Trust. For any further discussion, please contact any member of the CBC Deacon Board. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions?
I may have missed it, but did you talk about what's going to happen to the stocks? You mentioned the land, the house, everything else, but you didn't mention the stocks unless I missed it.
Community Bible Church will receive all of the proceeds from the stocks, the house, and the contents of the house, and the miscellaneous items. Did that answer your question?
But when you mentioned that you were looking to sell the house, sell the land, are you looking to sell the stocks is what I'm asking.
Randy might be able to answer that question.
What Bill's letter in his will and last testament was that he wished that his estate, which we will have to settle and do the things that Cody talked about, and then invest all that money, the stocks that's already invested, the sale of the house, the sale of the land, the sale of the personal property, the sale of the safety deposit box, invest that in safe investments, and the interest of those investments then would fund the 3 things that Cody talked about. Does that explain? That's correct, and they would be in a safe investment, and I think that's spelled out in Bill's last will and testament.
Thanks, Randy. Any other questions?
Well, I think to add to what Randy said, the financial advisor, the resolution that was passed to hire a financial advisor is who will handle all of the investments. And Bill was prescriptive in how he wanted the investment handled, and they're somewhat aggressive, I guess, not just safe. I mean, certainly they're not squandered, but it's not like you're doing the very conservative investments because he wanted the money to be put to work and be able to grow better so that there's more return on that investment for doing those items that Bill wished for. And that, that trust is kept separate, and it's not intended for the CBC general fund. It's for those purposes that are outlined in the trust.
Where is the money gonna come from to pay for all these advisors and the attorneys and stuff? Is that coming from the proceeds of the investments of the estate, or from the church general fund?
Believe
All of those expenses will be from the estate, not intended to be coming out of the general fund at all. And then, Carol, did you want to say anything? Okay. And the reason we're hiring his attorney and his tax consultant are aware of his situation and his estate, so it made sense to continue with them. And then the bookkeeper, it just made sense to have a professional doing that bookkeeping, making sure everything's above board and reported out clearly and concisely for the congregation as we go forward.
Did that answer your question?
I think the key for everybody to understand is that the deacons are the executor. Funds that actually haven't been deposited into CBC or anything else. So they're charged with what is spelled out in the will and all that as the executor. So more to come on that as we go down the road. Wanted to let you know the reason why you don't have any elder or deacon candidates on your ballot today is that we just aren't there yet, both with the candidates and ourselves. Our intent is to have a fairly large list of candidates for you when we have our next quarterly meeting that you would be voting on and then getting them on board. On the reconciliation process of where we're at, our consultant had finalized the assessment with the deacons and the elders and those individuals that were interviewed. He provided that here a couple Fridays ago. He has been busy in travel and things. I have communicated with him relative to that assessment. We have it now, and so at our next meeting with the elders and the deacons, we will be discussing it and seeing how we want to distribute that, disseminate it to all of you, as well as the recommendations that were provided with that and following up and moving forward with them. I have asked him to provide us, one, what that, in his mind, what that next phase would be, and two, the financial part of that, what it would cost us. And so those are things that I'm hoping that we have here real soon this week and that we can have some discussion on. And then on the associate pastor, again, we feel that it's important for us not to jump into that and getting somebody on board right now to get through some of these things, especially the reconciliation, and to move on that. But my hope would be that eventually we can, once we're down that path and far enough along, going back out again and actually having focus group meetings with you as a congregation and getting your input and what you would like to see relative to that position. So Any questions on any of those other things, Scott?
Pertaining to the elder deacon candidates, the bylaws state that it's the annual meeting that the elections happen, which implies that those terms that expire would happen at the elder or at the annual meeting. So that means that the elder board and the deacon board are actually shorter, because we haven't elected the new candidate.
That's correct. We are under the gun, but we want to do our due diligence to make sure that they have enough time to look at the duties and the responsibilities, as well as the elders being able to sit down and visit with them individually and see where they're at from a theological and other standpoint. But again, our hope is that these are at the quarterly meeting, which I believe is in December, that we will be bringing these to you. So you will be seeing some here shortly relative to doing their testimonies in front of the congregation and all that. But your point is well taken. Any other questions? Ted?
So are the elder board and the deacon board short-staffed, or have the existing elders and deacons agreed to extend their termination date?
Thank you for reminding me. So elder-wise, we've been short-staffed, and I believe Brian took Ron Duvall's position, and with Derek leaving here, so we're one down with that, and then Steve Boobman's position has not been. So we're at a minimum, we want 3 candidates before you, and again, we're trying to get more than that. On the deacon side, Mark Mayer, Cody Lorenz, and Matt Bauer will not be re-upping, so we've got other candidates to take their position. They were at least full in their minds relative to the 7 and trying to maintain that amount again, but it would be desirous to get more than that.
My question is, though, are those 3 deacons and the elders that are decided not to run, are the elder board short those people now, or are those boards short those people now, or are they going to serve until replaced?
I believe the way that the bylaws read is that their term is up after the annual business meeting, so they will be short. And on the elder side, where's Bob at? Bob Hofer will not be re-upping, so we're going to be short. Yes, we will be short. Any other questions? I think that's something that the question is what keeps them from staying on until the positions are filled, and that's something I think with each individual, if they would agree to serve until we get them replaced. Thanks, Kevin. All right, I'm going to close this. We're a little over time here. Let's close with prayer. Heavenly Father, you have immensely blessed us this past year, Lord. Not only financially, Lord, but just the many things that you provide in our daily lives, as well as our church, and just your grace and mercy that you impress upon us each and every day, Lord. Help us to always keep our eyes upon you, Lord, to reflect your light to our relationships individually and our relationships with others outside of these 4 walls, Lord. As you heard today, we need to go out to our community, and we pray that you would help us to do that. Give us people that are passionate of serving in a manner that glorifies you in our community and shows the love of Christ through that service. Lord, I thank you and praise you for the deacons and the elders that will be leaving us. Thank you for their service and their commitment to do your will here in our congregation. I praise you for their service, and just continue to bless their lives and continue to keep them engaged in this church body, Lord. Praise you for Pastor Chance, Lord, and just the things you have for him. I pray you would continue to lift him up and encourage him and encourage each other, Lord, as the body to serve one another. And again, thank you for each and everything that you've done for us, and praise you for in your glorious name. Amen.